Started with a joke I didn't laugh at. A dinner party in early spring, the kind that stretches into wine-soaked evenings and sideways glances across the table. Her laughter cut through the room like a knife, too loud, too effortless. A man across from her, not young, not old, someone forgettable if not for the way he leaned in while she spoke, had just made some throwaway line about marriage being the longest con. Everyone laughed, except me. She caught my eye briefly, but not to check if I was okay. It was more like a warning, a flash of irritation, almost like I was interrupting something she'd rather keep rolling. I held my glass a second longer than needed and nodded, just enough to not draw attention. That night, on the drive home, I watched her through the reflection in the passenger window. She was texting someone, hiding it poorly. When I asked, she said it was her sister. Her sister, who lives in a different time zone and doesn't know how to spell properly. Based on the messages I glimpsed, I didn't say anything. Not yet. But the first shift had already happened. Not the betrayal itself, that came later. This was something more subtle, more dangerous. A collapse of trust not in an instant, but like a ceiling groaning just before it caves. The real unraveling happened 2 weeks later at a charity gala. She insisted we attend. Said it was important. Said I needed to show my face more. I knew the tone, the one that implies you're already failing, already one step behind. She wore something silver, sharp-edged and deliberate. Hair pulled back, heels that made her a few inches taller. Gaze that slid right through me when I told her she looked stunning. She didn't say thank you, just smiled like she was already somewhere else. The night went on like a play I hadn't been given the script for. She moved through the crowd like she owned the room. I watched her talk to 3 different men. 2 she introduced, 1 she didn't. The last one, he touched her wrist. Not accidentally. She didn't pull away. Still, I said nothing. I made small talk with donors, shook hands, faked interest in speeches. But my mind was on that man's hand and the way her fingers lingered too long around her wine glass. It wasn't jealousy. It was recognition. I'd seen that look before, just never directed so far away from me. Later that night, in the parking garage, she said she forgot her clutch inside. Told me to wait in the car. I did. 15 minutes. 20. Then I got out. Inside, I took the service corridor, the one the staff use when they don't want to be seen. That's when I heard her voice. Not angry, not flirty either. Just a hushed, comfortable, like old lovers recounting secrets. I turned the corner and saw them. Her hand on his chest. His face close, too close. No kiss, not yet. But the atmosphere was so thick with something unspoken, it might as well have been a confession. She saw me, didn't gasp, didn't panic, just stepped back, slowly, like a cat caught knocking over a glass. "Why are you sneaking around like a child?" she asked, like I was the one in the wrong. The man beside her didn't move, didn't speak. She picked up her clutch from the ground, brushed past me and said, "Let's go. You've embarrassed yourself enough for one night." I didn't follow immediately. I stood there, staring at the man, who finally had the decency to look away. In that moment, I felt something dislodge inside me. Not rage, not grief, something colder. The realization that I wasn't married to a stranger. I was married to someone who had been slowly erasing me while smiling through it. And I wasn't sure yet, but I had a sense this wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last either. We didn't speak the entire ride home. The silence was thick, but not in that way silence usually sits, heavy and sad. No, this one buzzed, like a live wire under the skin. She stared out the window the whole way, her phone still in her lap, unread notifications lighting up the screen. I could see the names. I didn't recognize any of them. I parked the car. She stepped out without waiting for me. Keys in hand, she unlocked the door, walked in, and let it shut behind her without holding it open. The lock clicked like punctuation. A full stop to whatever I thought we were. I stood there on the porch for a few seconds, staring at the wood grain of the door like it would blink or flinch, like it might apologize on her behalf. Then I went inside. She was in the kitchen, pouring herself a drink. Not wine, something stronger. She didn't offer me one, didn't even glance in my direction. "I'm going to sleep," she said flatly. "You should too." That's when I followed her. Upstairs. Into our room. She began undressing like I wasn't even there. Pulled her earrings off, laid them on the dresser, slid out of her heels with the care of someone returning borrowed time. And I asked her, quietly, "Who is he?" She paused mid-motion, blouse half open. Then she turned to me like I'd asked what time it was. "Don't do this," she sighed. "You're tired." "I'm tired. This isn't the moment." That's how she played it, as if I was inventing things, as if I had misread the hand on her wrist, the whisper in the hallway, the look that told me I wasn't just being paranoid. I pressed again. Not yelling. I was beyond yelling. I asked, "Is it new?" Her eyes narrowed just a bit. "Enough." Then she said it. Not cruelly, not defensively. Just clean. "Does it matter?" That question burned more than any confession could have. She walked into the bathroom and shut the door, leaving me there in a room that no longer felt mine. I sat down on the edge of the bed, listening to the faucet run. I didn't know what I was waiting for. An apology? A breakdown? Something human? Instead, she emerged minutes later in silence, climbed into bed, turned off her lamp and faced away. I didn't sleep. At 3:12 a.m., I opened her phone. She never used a password. She didn't need to. She assumed I'd never look. And there it was. Messages that didn't try to hide. Dates. Photos. A saved contact with a fake name and real affection. It had been going on for months. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel anger, not yet. What I felt was something worse. Clarity. Like waking up and realizing the fire alarm had been ringing for hours and you were too asleep to smell the smoke. I left the phone on her side of the bed and went downstairs. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, hands resting on the wood, trying to remember the exact moment she stopped being mine. The truth? It wasn't at the gala. It wasn't even tonight. It was probably long before that, in quiet dismissals, in forgotten glances, in the thousand little ways she had been building a new life right in front of me, confident I'd be too blind to notice. She was right. Until now. The next morning, the air felt colder. Not in temperature, in tone. Even the light through the windows seemed drained, as if the house itself had caught wind of the betrayal and decided to mourn with me. She came downstairs dressed for work, coffee in hand, as if nothing had happened. Her phone, the same one I'd gone through hours earlier, buzzed softly in her pocket. She silenced it without looking at me. I waited. I wanted her to speak first. Maybe offer something, a thread, even a lie I could pull on. But she didn't. She walked past me to the front door, pausing only to glance at the mirror and fix a strand of hair. "You're not going to say anything?" I asked finally. She didn't turn around. "You've already decided what you think. What's the point?" "The point is honesty," I said. "You remember what that is?" She smiled, a cold, sideways smirk. "Don't act like you're some victim of a grand conspiracy. People grow apart. That's life." Then she left. That was the first time I felt the full weight of it. Not just that she had been with someone else, but that she had stopped caring whether or not I knew. Like I was a placeholder in her schedule, not a person she once vowed to share a life with. I stayed in that house for the next several hours, pacing. I replayed her words like a riddle I couldn't solve. People grow apart. That's life. No apology. No guilt. Just a shrugging off, as if what she'd done was akin to changing her favorite restaurant or rearranging furniture. I could have screamed. Instead, I made calls. A lawyer. Private investigator. A DNA test company. See, there was something she didn't know. Something I hadn't thought about in years because it never needed to be thought about. Our daughter. 16. Sarcastic. With her mother's eyes and my laugh. Or so I always believed. But something in the messages last night. One in particular. She doesn't suspect. No one does. It was only once. And it gave me her. That message cracked the floor beneath me. I had ignored timelines. I had believed when she said early delivery. I had trusted her to be the mother of my child, without suspicion, without proof. But now I needed to know. The test was quick to order. All I had to do was wait. And in those days I watched her closely. Not because I hoped she'd confess. I knew she wouldn't. I watched because I needed to see the full picture before I stepped into the fire. She was careful, calculating. No more secret messages on her phone. No more late nights. She played the role again, the polite wife, the attentive mother. But underneath I saw it, the detachment, the lack of investment. It was all choreography. and I was watching a performance I hadn't bought a ticket for. 3 days later, the results came in. Not mine. I stared at the envelope, hands still. No shaking. No rage. Just stillness. I heard the door open upstairs. She was home. Our daughter called down, asking what was for dinner. I didn't answer. I was already printing an address, the one the investigator had sent. A man's name, a city nearby. She would learn the truth soon enough. But it wouldn't come from me yelling. No, it would come in a different form. I had been robbed of truth for years, but now I held it clean and sharp. And I was ready to use it. I waited until the weekend. She was in the garden, pretending to care about the roses again. That used to be her real escape. A quiet ritual of pruning and planting, dirt under her nails, a rare break from performance. But now it was theater. Just another prop in the scene she wanted to project. Our daughter sat on the back steps scrolling through her phone, headphones in. She didn't look up when I walked outside, papers in hand, phone in my pocket, and truth weighing down every step. I stood there a moment watching them both. Two versions of the same lie, one intentional, the other unknowing. She turned when she felt my shadow on her shoulder. "I need to talk to you," I said. "Later," she muttered, not meeting my eyes. "No, now." That stopped her. She straightened, wiped her hands on her jeans like she was preparing for some chore. The expression she wore was one of distant irritation. Not fear, not regret. I handed her the envelope first. She didn't take it. I placed it on the table beside the garden shears and waited. "What is this?" she asked, already suspicious. "You tell me." She opened it slowly, as if stalling might delay the detonation. Her eyes scanned the page. No change in posture. No gasp. Just a pause. 1 second. 2. Then she said the words that turned my blood to ice. "So what now? Are you going to act like she isn't yours?" That's when the anger finally cracked through. Not shouting. I didn't give her that satisfaction. I leaned in close, voice low. "You let me raise another man's child. You looked me in the eyes for 16 years and built our lives on a lie. And now you want to pretend biology is just a footnote." She didn't flinch. "She's yours in every way that matters." I laughed. Sharp. Bitter. "You didn't give me the choice. You made it for me. You robbed me of the truth before I could even want it." Our daughter must have noticed the tension because she pulled out her earbuds and walked over. "What's going on?" she asked. Her voice still had that bored edge. The one she inherited from her mother. I didn't look at her. Not yet. I watched her instead. Waiting. Hoping, absurdly, that she might break character. That she might finally show something real. But she just folded the paper and said, "He's trying to punish me. For something that happened years ago." My daughter turned to me, confused. Punish her for what? That was the moment. The crossroads. The part where everything bends and breaks. So I did it. I pulled out the second envelope. Handed it to my daughter. She opened it, slower than her mother. Read the results. Then looked at me, eyes wide. "You're not?" she started. "No," I said. Then I handed her the address. A name. A location. "That's your biological father. If you have questions, take them to him." She looked between us. Her face a blur of denial, confusion, disbelief. "You're throwing me out?" she choked. "For something I didn't do?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm showing you what your mother never did, the full picture. You've got 30 minutes to pack a bag. You can come back once you've decided whether you want to live in a house built on truth, or keep pretending lies are love." She didn't move. Neither did her mother. And I realized then, neither of them had expected me to ever take control of the narrative. I turned and walked back inside. The clock was ticking. I sat in the living room, watching the hallway like it was a loaded weapon. The house was unnaturally quiet. No footsteps, no voices. Only the faint creak of floorboards from upstairs. She wasn't packing. She was thinking, or maybe trying to decide whether to fight or flee. That was her rhythm, test boundaries, then stall when they push back. I didn't go up. I didn't shout. I had already made the mistake of arguing in her language, emotion, confusion, manipulation. Now I was speaking mine, consequence. 23 minutes passed. Then she came down. Not my wife, my daughter. A duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Phone in hand. Her eyes were red. But she wasn't crying. Not yet. She didn't look at me directly. Just hovered in the entryway like a guest overstaying her welcome. "She's not coming," she said quietly. "I didn't ask her to." She shifted the bag. "So this is it?" I stood up, walked over, took a long look at her face. The girl I had raised, whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose nightmares I had chased away without ever knowing she wasn't mine by blood. "You have a right to know where you come from," I said. "I won't stop you from meeting him. I won't stop you from hating me either, if that's what you need to do." Her eyes welled up, but still no tears. "Why are you doing this now?" "Because I'm done pretending." She stood there a moment longer, then walked past me, out the front door. I watched her leave. The door didn't slam. It clicked shut like everything else that day, softly, finally, without fanfare. And then the house was empty. Not just physically, spiritually. It was gutted, hollow. The walls still held our pictures, but they felt like props from a play that had ended and forgotten to strike the set. I walked through the kitchen, my hand grazing the table where we'd had 1,000 dinners. The counter still held her coffee cup from that morning. Half full. No lipstick. She used to leave prints, now there was nothing. Upstairs, her door was closed. I pushed it open. She was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Still dressed, like she hadn't moved since our daughter left. I leaned in the doorway. "Are you going to say anything?" She blinked. "What do you want me to say?" "Something. Anything real." She laughed softly, not joyfully, but like someone trying to remember what joy felt like. "There's nothing left between us," she said. "Not anger, not love, not even enough for a proper goodbye." I nodded. "You're right." And I walked away, not with drama, not with a declaration, just walked into the spare bedroom I hadn't touched in years. I shut the door behind me, took a breath, and lay down. The sheets smelled like dust and memories I didn't want. But for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like failure. Felt like freedom. There was still grief to come. Still the echo of a family that had never really existed. But something new had begun, something mine. Not perfect, not whole, but honest. And that I could build on. The next morning arrived with no ceremony. No rain, no thunder, no divine sign to mark the aftershock. Just sunlight spilling over the floors like it always had, indifferent to the implosion it had illuminated the night before. I woke in the spare bedroom, the mattress too firm, the air too still, the kind of stillness that doesn't comfort, it observes. I sat up slowly, every joint in my body announcing its presence, as if even my muscles had grown wary of what came next. I listened. No movement from her room, no footsteps, no creak of stairs. It was late, too late for her to still be asleep. She had always been an early riser, even on weekends, even after nights like the last one. But now, nothing. I walked past her door. The same closed door that used to mean privacy. Now it meant distance. Finality. Downstairs, the coffee pot was full, untouched. She always made 2 cups. Always. 1,000 tiny rituals, now broken without apology. I poured one for myself out of habit, not desire. The bitterness matched the moment. I stood by the window and dialed. The line rang 3 times before she answered. "You sent her to him?" My wife, my ex, in everything but paperwork, asked. No greeting, no pretense. She wanted to go. She's a child. She's 16. She's confused. She's not the one who lied. Silence. Then a breath. Not sighing, weighing. "You're doing this to hurt me." I turned from the window, took a long sip. "No," I said. "I'm doing this so I can look in the mirror again." Another pause. Then a shift in her tone. Softer. Colder. "You think truth makes you righteous. But it just makes you cruel." That stopped me. Not because I believed it, but because I recognized the weapon. She was playing victim now. Shifting blame, distorting facts. Classic tactics. And once they might have worked. But I had outgrown her illusions. I ended the call. By noon, the house began to shift. She packed lightly. I didn't ask where she was going. She didn't offer. Just moved with mechanical precision, like someone fulfilling a contract that had long since expired. At the door, she turned. "You could have handled this with dignity." I stared at her. The woman who had rewritten my life with secrets and let me raise a child under a false name. and for a brief, surreal moment, I wondered how much of what we had was ever real. Then I answered, not with anger, but with truth. I did. You just never recognized what dignity looks like outside your reflection. She didn't reply, just left. No suitcase, no goodbye, just gone. And still, I didn't feel victorious. There are no winners in a war fought in whispers and withheld facts. Only survivors. Only those left to salvage something from the wreckage. I went to our daughter's room, sat on her bed. The comforter was half folded, the scent of her shampoo still in the air. On the nightstand was a photo, the three of us at the lake, smiling like we'd never heard of betrayal. I turned it face down. Then I picked up my phone and texted her. I don't know what comes next, but I'll always be honest with you from here on out, even if it hurts, especially then. I hit send, and then I began clearing out the attic. One box at a time, not just hers, mine too, the memories I had stored, the lies I had believed. It was time to start from zero. The attic was hotter than I remembered. Dust clung to everything like a second skin, stubborn and suffocating. I stood in the middle of it all, surrounded by boxes labeled in a handwriting I once found endearing. Spring clothes, holiday decor, old memories. Now they read like artifacts from a civilization I no longer claimed. I started with the smallest box. Inside, photographs. Dozens of them. Polaroids, glossy prints, digital snapshots we had printed out to feel more authentic. Our early years, vacations, birthdays, fake candid shots where I held the camera and she leaned into me, her smile full of something I thought was love. I held one up. We were standing at the Grand Canyon, arms around each other. I remembered that day. She had a headache the whole trip, barely spoke, snapped at me for forgetting to pack extra water. But in the picture, she's glowing, leaning her head on mine. That's when it hit me how easy it is to fake forever in a still frame. I put the photo back and moved to the next box. Baby clothes. A tiny pair of shoes with her name embroidered on the sides. A hospital bracelet. A sonogram. My throat tightened. Even if she wasn't mine by blood, she had been mine in every real way. Her first steps were toward me. Her first word was, Dada. I taught her how to ride a bike, how to tie her shoes, how to keep a secret. Ironic now, considering. I couldn't throw those away. Not yet. Maybe never. But then I found a letter. Folded twice, tucked into an old planner. I wasn't looking for it, it just fell out. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It wasn't mine. It was his. The other man. Not just messages or flirty notes. This was something else. Dated 16 years ago. A confession. Not quite a love letter, more like a plea. He wrote about that night. About how he couldn't stop thinking about her. About how he hoped she'd make the right choice. And how he'd understand if she had to stay for the child's sake. She kept it. All these years. Buried in a planner from the year our daughter was born. She never planned to come clean. Not when our daughter grew up. Not when we hit rough patches. Not even when I looked her in the eyes and asked her if there was ever anything she needed to tell me. This wasn't a mistake. It was strategy. A slow, calculated erasure of truth. She gambled that I'd never look too closely. And for 16 years, she was right. I stared at the letter for a long time. My hands didn't shake. No storm inside me. Just a steady, growing silence. Not emptiness, clarity. Later that day, I boxed up everything I didn't want to see again. Pictures. Love notes. Trinkets from a marriage built like a stage set. I labeled it archive. Not trash. Not keep. Just something in between. Something honest. And then I started a fire. Not with the box, but with the lies. I burned the letter in the fireplace. Watched it curl and flake and collapse into nothing. Not as revenge. Not as ritual. As release. That night, my daughter called. She was quiet. Careful. I met him, she said. The other one. I waited. He's fine, I guess. Nice. He doesn't know how to talk to me. I didn't respond. Then she added, he doesn't feel like mine. I finally said, you don't have to decide anything today. A pause. Then, are you okay? And for the first time in months, I told the truth. No, but I'm getting there. The house felt different now. Not quieter. It had always been quiet in the way unhappy homes are, but clearer. The kind of stillness you feel after the storm has passed and you can finally hear yourself think again. I didn't rush to fill the space she left behind. No sudden redecorating. No dramatic changes. I left her wedding dress hanging in the back of the closet where she'd hidden it for years. I left her perfume on the bathroom shelf, half-used. Let everything stay where it was, like a museum dedicated to the illusion I had lived inside. But I stopped living with it. I made small changes. The kind that aren't about her, they're about reclaiming breath. I fixed the broken hinge on the kitchen cabinet she never noticed. Rearranged the garage. Took down the painting she picked out without asking me. Replaced it with something I painted myself in college. I hadn't even remembered I still had it. And slowly, things started to settle. My daughter came back 3 weeks later. No bags. No declarations. Just walked in, sat on the couch, and turned on the TV. Like she'd only stepped out for milk. She didn't mention him. I didn't ask. For 2 hours, we watched some crime documentary where everyone lied to everyone else. We barely spoke. But when she got up to leave, she looked at me and said, "You didn't throw my stuff out." "No," I said. "Why would I?" She nodded, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't resolution. But it was real. That same week, the divorce papers came through. She hadn't fought it. No long emails, no last-minute manipulations. Just a signature. Maybe she knew there was no game left to play. Or maybe she had already built a new life while I was busy preserving the old one. The finality of it was strange. Not painful, not even relieving. Just still. Like watching a ship disappear into fog you didn't realize you were ready to lose. That weekend, I found myself driving with no destination. I passed places we used to go, the market she loved, the bookstore we took our daughter to when she was small. All haunted now, but in a way that no longer asked for grief. Just acknowledgement. I ended up at a hiking trail I hadn't touched in years. Something I used to do before marriage, before diapers, before quiet betrayals dressed as normal days. I walked until the trail narrowed and the trees swallowed the sound of the road. And then I sat, right there, on a rock beneath a bent tree, with nothing but birdsong and wind. I thought of her, not just what she'd done, but who she really was beneath the charm and calculation. I thought of the years, the effort, the blind trust, the quiet loyalty, the way I had confused endurance for strength, silence for love. I thought of my daughter, how she'd survived a lie without ever knowing she was inside one. How I would help her unlearn it all, gently, with truth. And finally, I thought of myself, not the version of me that stayed, but the one who finally opened the door and walked out of the fire. Then I stood up, and I walked back toward the trailhead, toward the car, toward the future. No fanfare, no triumph, just steps. But they were mine now. Fall arrived without waiting for permission. The trees in the neighborhood shed their colors like old memories, carpeting the sidewalks in reds and golds, reminding me that change doesn't ask. It just happens. The air turned sharp, crisp, honest. It had been months since she left. Our daughter began sleeping at the house more regularly, though she still kept a bag at her mother's place, or wherever her mother was now. We didn't talk about it. We had an unspoken agreement. No ghosts at the dinner table. One night, she asked me if I wanted to go out for coffee. Just the two of us. We ended up at a quiet cafe near the edge of town. The kind where the furniture didn't match and the music came from a real record player. We talked about school, about the documentary she wanted to make for her final project. She said it was going to be about truth and legacy, about the lies people build families on. She said it with a small, sideways glance. Not accusing, not scared, just aware. "You're part of it," she said, stirring her drink. "That story, whether you like it or not." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Yeah, I am." That was the first moment she looked at me not as the man who raised her, or the man who shook her world, but just as a man. Someone standing in the rubble, still breathing. Later that night, after she went to bed, I found myself staring at the empty hallway again. But it didn't ache this time. It just was. I poured a drink, sat by the window, and then, as if summoned by some internal clock, the phone rang. It was her. Not our daughter. Her. No greeting. No hesitation. Just this. "Are you happy now?" I took a moment. Let her question hang there. "Define happy," I said. She scoffed. "You tore everything apart. For what? To prove a point? To be right?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend. No, I replied. To stop lying. To stop bleeding out quietly while pretending it was normal. There was silence on her end. Then the sound of traffic. She was outside somewhere. Moving. I miss her, she said. But I don't miss you. That was the first honest thing she'd said in over a year. I don't need you to, I said. I just need you to stop pretending any of this happened by accident. She didn't respond. Just ended the call. And that was it. That's how the final string snapped. Not with shouting or drama. Just disconnection. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt weightless. Not empty. Clear. Later that week, our daughter brought home a draft of her documentary outline. She asked if I'd read it. I sat on the couch and did. The final line read, "Sometimes the person you call dad isn't the one who gave you life. He's the one who refused to abandon it." I looked at her. She shrugged. "You cool with that?" I didn't speak. I just reached out and hugged her. For the first time in a long time. And she didn't pull away. Winter came like an exhale. No snowstorms, no drama. Just a gradual hush. Streets quieting. Days shortening. The kind of season that doesn't shout but insists. The world outside slowed down. And, for once, so did I. It had been nearly a year. The house, once a battleground, now held a strange kind of peace. I could hear the fridge hum, the clock tick, the occasional creak in the walls. There was no tension beneath the silence now. No performance. Just breath, space, and time. I started writing again. Not for anyone. Not for publishing. Just to see what my voice sounded like after years of being filtered through someone else's expectations. It was rough at first, like speaking after a long illness. But the words came, one by one, honest and awkward and unpolished. One evening, I found a letter taped to the inside of the front door. No postage, no envelope, just her handwriting folded neatly in half. I stood there for a long time before opening it. It wasn't an apology. Of course not. It was a timeline, dates, names, locations, an admission detailed, surgical. Almost like she wanted to be caught properly, now that it no longer mattered. At the bottom, a single line. "I didn't think you'd ever walk away." I didn't respond. Instead, I put it in a drawer with other things I didn't burn. Not because I wanted to keep them, but because some truths don't need to be destroyed. Just stored. Marked. Understood. A few days later, my daughter came home from school with snow in her hair. She shook it off, laughing, her cheeks red from the cold. She threw her coat on the chair, grabbed hot chocolate from the cupboard, and told me her documentary had been selected for a film competition. "They're going to show it," she said, almost shy. I watched her, this young woman shaped by truth, by fire, by everything her parents did and didn't do, and felt something unexpected. Gratitude, not for the betrayal, not for the loss, but for the clarity it left behind. That night, she sat beside me on the couch again. Same old documentary series, same casual distance. But halfway through, she leaned her head on my shoulder. We didn't speak. We didn't need to, because for the first time in years, I wasn't wondering who I was to her. I wasn't guarding myself. I wasn't afraid of what I didn't know. I had already walked through the worst of it, and I was still here. Not perfect, but real. And from here on out, that would always be enough.